Testing, testing.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to call the Reynoldsburg City Council meeting to order. The day is May 23rd, 2022. The time is now 6:31. I'm Council President Angie Jenkins, and I would like to welcome everyone to Reynoldsburg City Council chambers. At this time, we'll have the invocation that will be given by Councilmember Bowen Pacquiao. Following the invocation, please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
ॐ सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Thank you. I
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Would Ms. Butler please call the roll?
Councilmember Pecoriel,
Yes.
Councilmember Lawson Rowe, Councilmember Cotner,
Here.
Councilmember Baker, Councilmember Bryant,
Here.
Councilmember Strickland,
Present.
Councilmember Salvati,
Here.
President Jenkins.
Here. Next, we have the approval of the agenda. The then and now legislation needs to be removed from the agenda. Please remove item 10E3 from the Finance and Administration Committee and item 12, number 5, from the consent agenda for a first reading. Next, we have the approval of the minutes for May 9, 2022. Regular council meeting will be submitted at the June 12, 13, 2022 meeting. Next, we have community comments. The community comments portion of the meeting is an opportunity for citizens to address council with comments about legislation on the agenda or just general concerns. Council will not respond directly to questions. Before addressing city council, members of the public are asked to complete a speaker's form and give it to the clerk. The clerk will invite speakers to step to the microphone, give their name and address. All remarks should be addressed to council as a whole and not exceed 3 minutes. Do we have any comments from the public?
Yes, we have Aaron Upchurch.
Would you please come to the microphone and give your name and address?
Name is Erin Upchurch. My address is 956 Caniff Road, Columbus, Ohio 43221. Good evening, Council President Jenkins, Council Pro Tem Bryant, and council members at large. As I shared, my name is Erin Upchurch. My pronouns are she, her. And I'm a parent to 2 young adults, an independently licensed social worker in the state of Ohio, and the executive director of Kaleidoscope Youth Center, Ohio's largest and longest-standing organization to serve and support LGBTQI+ youth and young adults ages 12 to 24. Both of my children began their lives in Reynoldsburg, and it is my pleasure to be back here with you all this evening. I'm here tonight to request your leadership in both protecting and potentially saving the lives of vulnerable young people through the designation of conversion therapy as a discriminatory act or practice. Conversion therapy, also known as sexual orientation or gender identity change efforts, is a practice grounded in the belief that LGBTQI+ identities are abnormal. Often referred to as reparative therapy, the practice includes any of several dangerous and discredited practices aimed at changing an individual's sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression. This model is currently practiced by some licensed professionals in the context of providing health care, and by many clergy or other spiritual advisors in the context of religious practice. And because varying terms are used, such as reparative therapy, faith-based and/or Christian counseling, many young people and young adults find themselves blindly on the receiving end of these efforts, which are not only deceitful, manipulative, but also violate the ethical practice of informed consent and self-determination. Empirical evidence demonstrates that efforts to change someone's sexual orientation and gender identity are associated with poor mental health outcomes, including suicidality, specifically for LGBTQI+ people. To give you a brief snapshot of the impact, in 2019, 67% of LGBTQI+ youth report that someone attempted to convince them to change their sexual orientation or gender identity. 42% of cisgender youth who have undergone conversion therapy report a suicide attempt, and 57% of transgender non-binary youth who have undergone conversion therapy have reported a suicide attempt within the previous year. A number of prominent national professional health associations, including the American Medical Association, the American Psychological Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics, National Association of School Psychologists, the American Counseling Association, and others have issued public statements opposing the use of conversion therapy because it is harmful and ineffective. The American Counseling Association has even referred to this practice as therapeutic fraud. It is important to note that the banning or prohibiting of conversion therapy and its likeness would not restrict any constitutional rights. It will prohibit harmful and discredited treatment by licensed professionals, however, it does not affect clergy or religious individuals providing education or prevent anyone from publishing, discussing, or advocating any viewpoints or beliefs regarding sexual orientation and gender identity. In addition to the aforementioned national organizations, there are a number of organizations in the state of Ohio that are also in support of banning conversion therapy, due to it being egregiously unethical. Those organizations include, but are not limited to, Equality Ohio, Human Rights Campaign, Equitas Health, Kaleidoscope Youth Center, Mental Health and Addiction Advocacy Coalition, NASW Ohio, Columbus City Council, Ohio Psychological Association, Ohio School Psychologists Association, and the Ohio Association of Alcohol and Other Drug Addiction Counselors. To demonstrate the potential for this collective harm conversion therapy provides, also in 2019, the Williams Institute reported that 698,000 adults ages 18 to 59 were subjected to conversion therapy in the United States, 350,000 of whom received this as adolescents. 16,000 LGBTQI+ youth ages 13 to 17 will receive conversion therapy from a licensed healthcare professional before turning 18. LGBTQI+ youth and young adults are people. They are artists, musicians, students, siblings, parents, leaders, and friends. They dream, cry, laugh, and create. One of the most beautiful opportunities of being human is the journey of knowing ourselves for ourselves and then living as radiantly and boldly as possible. Our young people deserve more. To close with one of my favorite quotes, I don't need you to praise me for my resilience. I need you to stop creating spaces of trauma where being resilient is all I'm allowed to be. That's Dr. Omolaro Uwademo. We must be non-negotiable and unapologetic in our stand for our youth and our future. Representative, daring, and unapologetic leadership are necessary to shift and expand possibilities of freedom and ultimately liberation. And we must no longer tolerate and engage in dehumanizing conversations. As part of our collective village, we invite you, Kaleidoscope Youth Center, to join us in stepping into what's possible, creating a social fabric that holds the inherent dignity of all people, that connects us to each other and ourselves to belonging. We collectively have the power to pursue something different through our everyday acts of service and love. So let us stop creating and perpetuating environments of trauma and harm. It will forever remain our collective charge to create a world in which our young people no longer need to be resilient. And so as a fellow resident of Franklin County, mental health and wellness professional, parent, and leader of an organization that serves and supports young people vulnerable to this model of practice, I ask for Reynoldsburg City Council to amend Chapter 503, Unlawful Discriminatory Practices of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Reynoldsburg, to designate conversion therapy as a discriminatory act or practice. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments from the public?
No, Madam President.
And no emails?
No.
Do we have any comments from council? Yes, Councilwoman Lawson-Rowe.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to share that, first of all, I'd like to say congratulations in advance to our students at Reynoldsburg High School. They'll be graduating tomorrow. Special shout out to our intern, Mr. Drew Longenberger. Congratulations. Number two, I'd like to share that Reynoldsburg Juneteenth will offer a special Juneteenth Legacy Award, and it was just announced today and shared on the city's Facebook page. Please allow me to share just a small snippet. As a tribute to his memory, the Reynoldsburg City Council has created the George J. Steeble Juneteenth Legacy Award. This award honors an individual or group that has made a noteworthy contribution to our community in the areas of diversity, equity, inclusion. Nominations may be submitted to our clerk, Ms. Prasher, by June 1st, 2022. If you're interested in submitting a nomination, please include the nominee's contact information and a brief specific summary describing the nominee's contribution to our community and why the nominee is worthy of recognition. The recipient or recipients will be recognized and awarded at Reynoldsburg Juneteenth on Saturday, June 18, 2022. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments from council? Do we have any comments from Mayor Begany?
Yes, Madam President, members of council, audience members. I just wanted to say thanks again and kudos to our Parks and Recreation Department for another wonderful event this past Saturday at Plant Reynoldsburg. We planted over 2,000 plants in about an hour and 45 minutes, and it was all before the hail came later on in the evening. So it was a great event. Also, organizations throughout Reynoldsburg actually participated in part of the Adopt a Road program, picking up litter in various areas all the way throughout. So again, thanks to everyone who tries to do their part to make our community a great place. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other communications? Next, we have our motions. We have a resolution to recognize Arjun Sabi as part of Asian Heritage Month. I may have messed up the name, and I apologize. Councilmember Pacquiao, would you please read the resolution?
Thank you. Thank you, Council President. So, Asian Heritage Month, or also it's known as Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. It's a mouthful. On the occasion of this month, or this Heritage Month, I'd like to share a little bit about myself, and also want to clarify one very important thing that whenever we go outside, Asian means Chinese. That's what is understood. But just want to clarify that Asia is a big continent. China falls under that one, and we are from Bhutan and Nepal and India. Everything on that part of the world, the Asian. But that's what I found, and yes. And when I share about myself, there is a large community in Reynoldsburg from a Bhutanese background who are also from Asia again. For us, for resettled refugees, this country has given a lot. So much so that there's nothing much to be given. Now it's our turn to give back. The government of Bhutan, under the leadership of Fourth King, enacted a policy called One Nation, One People, One Language, and forced out 1/6 of the population out of the country. Those who believe in different faith, those who speak different language, and those who practice different culture. In the same process, we were forced into the refugee camp, and many of the audience are here. We spent together 18 years in the refugee camp. Just imagine, as one day, for a week, electricity is gone, and outside temperature is 90 to 100 degrees centigrade. That used to be our life throughout in the refugee camp. And the same story is true for a lot of members in the audience here. And in 2009, United States and various other countries decided to resettle those people in the United States. So in that process, we were resettled in the United States. And the same story is true for Arjun Subedi. So the situation that many other individuals in the community has done significant work. I'm so happy when you go around Reynoldsburg, we see the many Bhutanese immigrants that have started a business and many success in the education and many other different fields. But Arjun did an very same thing but differently. In the refugee camp, where there was no school, no buildings, nothing was there, but there are members in the community who came out and volunteered to be a teacher there. I went to a school where there was no roof. I went to the school, there was no classroom. But there was a tree. Under that tree, I studied, and there were teachers who taught. Those teachers are also resettled in the country today. And many of them, they are older. Nobody, and I don't want to say nobody, but they don't get enough recognition. But Arjun, with his company, he formed a group to recognize those teachers, those who volunteered back in the refugee camp. So that part of work that's done by Arjun stand out, and many teachers felt very emotional, number one. Number two, they felt recognized by their work. So before I read the resolution, I would like to welcome Arjun to come out and say a few words, then I'll read out the resolution.
Honorable City of Reynoldsburg Mayor, City of Council Member of Reynoldsburg, it's my honor to be here to present, to recognize by the City of Reynoldsburg. As Council Member Von Peckrell said that, like while we back in refugee camp, we can find to be sit under the tree and taught by our teachers. A few teachers are staying back there too. I want to, their name, Kiran Gautam, Divya Adhikari, Om Subedi, they are the one who volunteer themselves without any money, without any cost. They are voluntarily taught us to bring us over here. Because of them, we are here to do something in our place. That's the thing I have been doing, we have been doing. Non-profit organizations called Nakshatra Foundations. And Nakshatra Foundation has been recognizing the teachers who volunteer back in a refugee camp, as well as Nakshatra Foundation is helping the needy children back in refugee camp, build schools recently, and there are 290 students, children are getting education from that schools in Belagi 2 refugee camps. Those are the things been doing by the Nakshatra Foundations. We have a small team, but we are trying to get something done who are in need, especially in the education field. That's we try to be doing it. And I'm very thankful, I'm very humble. It's been recognized, it's been given an opportunity to speak out in front of the Reynoldsburg City Hall. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Arjun. So a motion to approve a resolution to recognize Arjun Subedi. Whereas May is Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, which commemorates the achievements and contribution of Asian American and Pacific Islanders that enrich our history, society, culture, and represented by distinguished individuals. And whereas this resolution recognizes one of those Asian American, Arjun Subedi, a local Reynoldsburg businessman, and whereas Mr. Subedi has worked to serve our community for many years, including establishing online dance competition during COVID for kids, and whereas he also produced a movie to provide community awareness regarding substance use disorder, and whereas Mr. Subedi created platforms including an interested tournament for young people to energize in sports and games, and whereas Mr. Subedi's effort during COVID included helping non-profit organizations by donating foods and other supplies during pandemic, and whereas his support to the community includes helping needy families to pay rents during critical periods, and whereas Mr. Subedi oversaw a recognition of more than 300 teachers across the United States and Canada who volunteered in refugee camps, and whereas he constructed school buildings in Vietnamese refugee camp for children who are still in camps and donated school supplies to school-age children. Therefore, be it resolved by this Council of the City of Reynoldsburg, we do hereby recognize Arjun Subedi for his selfless service to the Nepali community as well as the entire Reynoldsburg community, and thank and congratulating Mr. Subedi on making a difference. Thank you.
Do we have any comments or questions regarding this resolution? May I have a motion to approve this resolution? Councilmember Bryan, is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Strickland, is there any other further discussion? Oh, was it Baker? Okay, sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries.
Let me give that.
Okay. Next, we have our reports. Clerk of Court report. Ms. Butler, please.
The clerk of court submitted monies collected from the courts held in March in the amount of $21,993.
Thank you. Next, we have Development, Parks, and Recreation Committee. Councilmember Baker.
Thank you, Madam President. This is the Development and Park and Recreation Committee meeting for May 23rd, 2022. Members in attendance are Councilmember Cotner, Councilmember Lawson Rowe, Councilmember Pacquiao, myself, and you, Madam President. The first item on the agenda is, actually, I think it's the only item on the agenda, yep. An ordinance adopting provisions of Section 3735-.65 through 3735-70 of the Ohio Revised Code to establish and describe the boundaries of a community reinvestment area in the city of Reynoldsburg, designating a housing officer to administer the program, creating a community reinvestment housing council, a tax incentive review council, and declaring an emergency. Director Myers, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm well, thank you. So this is a ordinance to create a community reinvestment area. With a community reinvestment area, you define the area in which that is the scope of the area. So it's approximately 36 acres. It's the area across from Glen Rest Cemetery. Within there is about 15 acres that the city owns. The area of this CRA, I'm sorry for using acronyms, of the community reinvestment area is just that 36 acres. And basically what this is a very commonly used economic development tool for the area. While it wasn't a CRA, it was an enterprise zone. Something similar was used for the L Brands facility when that was built. So basically, by creating this area, that gives you the ability to do abatements. And as part of this process, we had to do a housing study, which looks at the housing stock, and I've got examples of kind of the condition there. And basically, you would, if this was passed, you then send it to the state and they review it and then they have to approve it. So the reason that this is listed as an emergency is last time I talked to the state, the position for actually reviewing this study, or this petition as I call it, was vacant. So I have some concerns about just the amount of time that state would take to review it. If this were passed, then what happens is we package it all up, submit it to the state, and ultimately they have to review and approve it. So that's the process. The intent of this is to create an area in which we'd be able to do abatements. And it would be specifically just in that 36 areas described in the submission.
Sorry. Is there any questions for Director Myers from council?
Yes, I have.
Sure. Councilman Pacquiao.
Yeah, I try to understand this, and now it's more clear, but where is this located actually?
So it's across from Glen Rest. If you go, and I'll go in my packet here, there's bounds. So there's a parcel list in the packet. There's a map in Exhibit A. I'm holding it up, sorry for those at home, but it's along Main Street. It's roughly bounded just slightly west of Greenspire. Then it goes north along Goldsmith, just slightly north of Goldsmith, and then it ends just to the east of Green Tree Court. So it's about 15 or so of the 36 acres right now is vacant land across from Glen Rest, right off of Main Street. The majority of it is the longest section is along Main Street, and then it goes a little bit north up to just south of Elliott Drive. So it's kind of the very eastern edge of town, if that helps.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee for Director Myers? Any from council? Yes, Councilman
Can we
Cotton.
clarify the emergency again? I understand you said it was vacant, but what's the, I mean, this is a pretty big area and involves some private property as well as city-owned property. So, just showing up in our packet and moving forward emergency, what's the need for an emergency with something like this?
My understanding would be to do I was looking for a 2-read emergency, not a 1-read emergency. So that would be the intent for it. Just to, the process would be if you have any project that is so there's different rules for commercial, industrial, that's how it's described. So if we want to do a project like that, we would have to come back to you folks with another agreement. So basically, the process for this is getting this approved by you folks, sending it to the state, getting the state to approve it, and then if we wanted to do a project in that area that was a industrial or commercial one, we'd have to come back to you folks for an ordinance. So it's a long leadway, so that's the intent for that.
But we've already got plans for the city-owned property, so we know what those are supposed to look like. And again, a lot of this involves private property. We talk to those property owners.
There's no harm on the private property owners for that. This would be a tax abatement on improvements so it's not going to make your tax bill go up.
So we haven't talked to any property owners around in the area of their input.
I haven't specifically
Okay.
reached out to them,
Thank
no.
Any other questions? Okay. Seeing none, seeing none, I go ahead and make a motion that we forward this on to council for its first reading. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Packrell. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, as ayes have it, it'll be moved on to council for its first reading as an emergency. As there is no further business for the Development, Park, and Recreation Committee meeting, Madam President, back to you.
Thank you. Next, we have Public Safety, Law, and Court Committee. Councilmember Bryant, please.
Thank you, President Jenkins. This is the Public Safety Law and Courts Committee meeting for May 23rd, 2022. Members in attendance are Councilmember Cotner, Councilmember Peckerell, Councilmember Lawson Rowe, myself, and you, President Jenkins. Item 1 is an ordinance amending Chapter 503, Unlawful Discriminatory Practices of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Reynoldsburg to designate conversion therapy as a discriminatory act or practice. This ordinance is back to committee for first reading and further discussion. Are there any questions or comments from the committee on this legislation?
I'll just ask a little bit just to make sure we're at least communicating through this. The woman who spoke earlier specifically talked about constitutional issues, which I agree this doesn't seem to create any, but where a church issue, again, I brought this up 2 weeks ago about churches. What is prayer considered, or a counseling session with a church youth pastor? What do some of those practices look like in regards to this legislation?
As far as spiritual counseling, as long as it's not being conducted by a medical professional for a medical purpose, it's not covered by this particular ordinance. So this remains relatively unaffecting to the churches.
And I'm supportive of, again, letting certainly people make their choices. I understand and appreciate what the woman had commented earlier. And the fact that this is not outlawed by these associations, but definitely not supported by many organizations. I think there's definitely reason to be aware of that, but I guess, again, just making sure that we're not stepping into choices between doctors, patients, families, and religious, again, I hate to say religious counseling, because I think unfortunately that oftentimes goes too far and uses that as a covering. And so I just want to make sure there are the ability still to protect those and not overly aggressively institute something on them. So.
My concern is essentially that you have children under the age of 18 being subjected to something that makes them feel that they are somehow inappropriate. And that is not fair to them. That drives a lot of young people to suicide or suicide attempts. This is here to protect those individuals.
I can understand and appreciate that. I don't know that this does that, but again, is it a step to help? I can see and appreciate that. I mean, again, I think everyone should absolutely be accepted for who they are, and if there's something we can do to help that, I can understand that.
Any other questions or comments from the committee on this legislation? Council? All right, I move that we forward this ordinance to council for first reading. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Pecorell. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. This ordinance will be forwarded to council for a first reading. Thank you.
Thank you. There is no Public Service and Transportation Committee meeting this evening. Next, we have Finance and Administration Committee. Councilmember Savati.
Thank you, President Jenkins. This is the Finance and Administration Committee meeting for May 23rd, 2022. Members in attendance are Councilmember Baker, Councilmember Bryant, Councilmember Strickland, myself, and President Jenkins. The first item on the agenda is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Trivium Development LLC for the sale of real property and declaring an emergency. Director Meyer.
Thank you, Councilmember Savati. Yes, this is the ordinance for the purchase and sale agreement to sell the site that's known as Happy Dragon to Trivium for redevelopment purposes. The sale price is approximately $462,000. The project will be approximately 11,500 square foot office and retail building. The project will also provide 38 parking spaces available to the public, and the project itself has received major site plan approval from the Planning Commission, as well as it has received approval on its signed package. So that is where it stands. Also, if you'd like, Mr. Spencer from Trivium is here if you'd like him to speak on it. With that, I'd like to hear any questions you may have.
Thank you, Director. Are there any questions or comments from the committee on this legislation?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Savati. If possible, can Mr. Tim come up and just, share some of the plans that's supposed to be happening at that location?
Sure. Mr. Spencer, you want to come on up?
Good evening. My name is Tim Spencer. I'm the president of Trivium Development. Basically, the elevator pitch is I'm a local developer, 20-plus years experience here in Central Ohio. We are presenting a purchase agreement, as the development director had pointed out, for the Happy Dragon site. If you did not follow along through our site plan approvals, the property is going to be redeveloped into essentially two buildings, a larger building that has frontage on Main Street, two-story, and then a smaller building that has frontage on Lancaster. The buildings will be joined with a courtyard or patio on the Lancaster side and the eastern portion of that larger building. The first floor of the building is a mix of restaurant and retail uses. We're currently in LOI or lease negotiations with an ice cream provider known as Switch Social, S''WICH. They're currently located in the Short North. Camelot Wines is in negotiations to provide more of a wine bar and charcuterie and to-go item foods. And then we have a sandwich shop and down to 2 coffee providers for the area. In addition to that, we are working with Brickhouse Blue, which is currently enjoys 2 locations in Bridge Park, and they are interested in providing co-working opportunities on the second floor. In addition to that, we have an LOI out for a local Edward Jones Financial Planning Institute, or office, excuse me. And then we have one other office space that user is asked to remain confidential because they're negotiating their extension at this time. Does that answer your questions?
Thank you, Mr. Spencer.
No problem.
Do we know the square footage on that area where you actually supposed to be, building, starting to build?
You'll find in the development agreement, in the purchase agreement, it's just under 12,000 square feet. Just a little backstory. We worked with the city and its departments over the last number of months. We would have liked to put more of a linear building, more capacity, more density on that site. As we got into some of the due diligence items, we were sensitive to the flooding last summer. In addition to floodway and floodplain issues that restrict development, we also wanted as much parking as possible. The site plan that was approved at Planning Commission last month actually was built around the number of parking spots and then taking the storm considerations into a factor. So we prioritized the storm, the parking lot, and what was left got us to the 12,000 square feet.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the rest of council? All right, so I guess seeing none, I move we forward this ordinance to council for a first read. Do I have a second? Second from Councilmember Strickland. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, this ordinance be forwarded to council for its first reading. Next item on the agenda is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a capital improvement construction reimbursement agreement with Trivium Development LLC and declaring an emergency. Director Meyer.
Thank you. Yes, so, let me adjust it up. What you have before you is an ordinance with the TIF reimbursement agreement for public infrastructure improvements associated with the site. As Mr. Spencer mentioned, there's public parking, there's some other improvements on there. That the dollars from the TIF reimbursement only cover public infrastructure work. They are delineated out. So that is what this agreement is specifying. The dollar amount in there is about 1.12 million, generated from the TIF revenue of the Bryson Main TIF. So that is, and there's a accounting of cost in there. So that's the ordinance in front of you for first read. I'm happy to answer any specific questions you may have about it.
Thanks. And I already think I know the answer to this, but so that's a reimbursement. So it's not, we're not just writing a check for 1.2 million and then.
Correct. It's repaid in a couple tranches, and it's laid out in the agreement, but it's not all due. I believe the first payment is due. It's not till after construction, and it's broken up into tranches, so it's not all at once, and it's not due until further down the road after construction has already started.
All right, with that, any questions from the committee for Director. And the rest of council? All right. That was easy. I move we forward this ordinance to council for a first reading. Do I have a second? Second from Councilmember Bryant. Any last discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries, and that ordinance will be forwarded to council for its first read. That concludes the business for the Finance Administration Committee, and I return the meeting to President Jenkins.
Thank you. Next, we have consent agenda for emergency adoption. Items 11, 1 through 6 are part of a consent agenda. These ordinances stand for emergency adoption. Unless someone wants to remove an item for further discussion, council will move forward with an emergency approval. Ms. Butler, please read items 11, 1 through 6.
Item 1, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Strasser Paving Company pertaining to the 2022 street improvement project, appropriating funds and declaring an emergency. Item 2, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with EMH&T pertaining to the inspection services for 2022 street improvement project, appropriating funds and declaring an emergency. Item 3, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract for 2022 sidewalk program Phase 8, appropriating funds and declaring an emergency. Item 4, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Strasser Paving Company pertaining to the installation of speed tables on Priestley Drive, appropriating funds and declaring an emergency. Item 5, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Pavement Technology, Inc. pertaining to the 2022 street improvement project, preventative maintenance, appropriating funds and declaring an emergency. Item 6, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Strasser Paving Company pertaining to the 2022 street improvement project, Contract A, alternate number 11, Reynoldsburg Police Department, West Parking Lot, appropriating funds and declaring an emergency.
May I have a motion to approve these ordinances?
So moved.
Councilmember Baker, may I have a second?
Second.
Councilmember Lawson Rowe. Ms. Butler, please call the roll.
Councilmember Pacquiao?
Aye.
Councilmember Lawson Rowe?
Aye.
Councilmember Cotner?
Aye.
Councilmember Baker?
Aye.
Councilmember Bryant?
Aye.
Councilmember Strickland?
Aye.
Councilmember Salvati?
Aye.
President Jenkins?
These ordinances are approved, 7 affirmative votes and no negative votes. Next, we have consent agenda for a first reading. Items 12, 1 through 4 are part of a consent agenda. These ordinances stand for a first reading unless someone wants to remove an item for further discussion. Council will move forward with a first reading. Ms. Butler, please read items 12, 1 through 4.
Item 1, an ordinance adopting provisions of sections 3735.65 through 3735.70 of the Ohio Revised Code to establish and describe the boundaries of a community reinvestment area in the city of Reynoldsburg, designating a housing officer to administer the program, creating a community reinvestment housing council, a tax incentive review council, and declaring an emergency. Item 2, an ordinance amending Chapter 503, unlawful discriminatory practices of the codified ordinances of the city of Reynoldsburg to designate conversion therapy as a discriminatory act or practice. Item 3, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Trivium Development LLC for the sale of real property and declaring an emergency. Item 4, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a capital improvement construction reimbursement agreement with Trivium Development LLC and declaring an emergency.
These ordinances stand for a first reading. Next, we have a consent agenda for a third reading. Items 13, 1 and 2 are part of a consent agenda. These ordinances stand for a third reading and approval. Unless someone wants to remove an item for further discussion, council will move forward with a vote on these ordinances. Ms. Butler, please read items 13, 1 and 2.
Can you read them separately, please?
I'm sorry?
Read them individually. Vote
Okay,
individually.
okay. We will read them individually.
Item 1, an ordinance appropriating funds from the unappropriate general fund to various accounts in the Parks and Recreation Department.
May I have a motion to approve this ordinance?
So moved.
Councilmember Baker, may I have a second?
Second.
Councilmember Savati. Ms. Butler, please call the roll.
Councilmember Pacquiao?
Aye.
Councilmember Lawson Rowe?
Aye.
Councilmember Cotner?
Aye.
Councilmember Baker?
Aye.
Councilmember Bryant?
Aye.
Councilmember Strickland?
Aye.
Councilmember Salvati?
Aye.
President Jenkins?
This ordinance has been approved, 7 affirmative votes and no negative votes. Ms. Butler, please read item 13-2.
Item 2, an ordinance to repeal and replace Chapter 511 fireworks of the codified ordinance of the City of Reynoldsburg.
May I have a motion to, is there any discussion? May I have a motion to approve this ordinance? Councilmember Strickland? Is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Savati? Ms. Butler, please call the roll.
Councilmember Pecorell?
Yeah, aye.
Councilmember Lawson Rowe?
Nay.
Councilmember Cotner?
Nay.
Councilmember Baker?
Nay.
Councilmember Bryant?
Nay.
Councilmember Strickland?
Nay.
Councilmember Salvati?
Aye.
President Jenkins?
Okay. I am not sure because I couldn't hear everyone clearly. I believe the vote is 2-5. Am I correct on that?
I believe
So that would be 2 affirmative votes and 5 negative votes. Am I clear on that? Thank you. Just wanted to be sure. Next, we have other council matters. Does anyone on council have any further items that you would like to discuss this evening? Councilmember Strickland?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I just want to get some information out to our residents that live on the Franklin County of Reynoldsburg. We are still having to cope with the pandemic. People are still trying to get to work. They're still having issues paying for their utilities or their rent and or mortgage. I've been working with the City of Columbus on trying to find other opportunities. So one of the opportunities is Franklin County RISE, R-I-S-E, is for parents and guardians. They will assist with childcare expenses, and you can actually earn a scholarship up to $10,000 for each child. Again, we're going to try to get this on our website and get the information out there, but there's still funds available for families that's still having issues with paying rent or utilities, and also, having some issues with childcare.
Thank you. Does anyone have anything else that you would like to discuss? Councilmember Baker?
I didn't get to say it earlier, but I want to reiterate what my colleague said. Councilwoman Lawson Rowe, about congratulations to those who are graduating this weekend from Reynoldsburg High School, and to all the graduates, whether you're graduating from college, nursing school, trade school, all the way down to kindergarten. I think they have a presentation for preschool now. I don't know. But anyway, just congratulations all around, because I'm a big proponent for education, and I do believe that when a child graduates, whatever level it is, it's a monumental occasion, because I do think it's a very important part of life. Second of all, I want to thank military or police force, nurses, doctors, those who are working in the logistic industry and those who are working in retail, for all the hard work you do to help to keep this country moving during this pandemic. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else have anything to discuss this evening? Our upcoming meetings. We have our next upcoming council meeting, which will be June 13th, 2022. We also have BZBA and our Planning Commission meeting. If there's no additional business this evening, this meeting stands adjourned, and the time is now 7:21. Thank you. What?
All that was the days and times that you choose.